Hi, my name is Simon, and I want to walk through over the next few minutes what Octomon is. So I work for Cloudflare, I work in networking, and often I am sat in front of my laptop, either at a customer or at my home or in a hotel, and the internet's not working very well. Like, there's a problem, it's slow, I don't get connectivity. And so I often want to answer that question, and I use a bunch of tools. I use ping, I use traceroute, I use bandwidth, trippy, and I kind of get frustrated with having to use different tools, start them, stop them, look at the data. And I thought I really want one tool that just presents me with a bunch of information to help me answer the question, is my internet a problem locally on my machine, on my local network? Is it my local ISP, or is it just the internet? So I wrote a tool, and it's called Octomon, and it's what you can see here right now. So first of all, as you can see, it's organized into 4 different panels. So top left, we have the quality of the connection itself. We have top right, we have bandwidth usage. Bottom left, we've got kind of the local network or interface, like the interface and some of the information about how that local network is connected. And then bottom right is what's going on with my machine, just from a resources perspective. And that's mostly just CPU usage and memory usage. So I'm going to walk through each one of these very quickly. So top left, and by the way, pressing the F key will full screen each one of those panels. So you use tab to move through them, you hit F each time, and you get more data if you actually send it full screen. So let's first look at the connection quality screen. So here we've got, by default, it adds in Cloudflare, Google, and Quad9's DNS entries, and it's polling them. And you can see here on the right-hand side, average P95 times packet loss, if there is any, for those 3 targets, and then based on your local network. So I'm actually running this in demo mode. So all the numbers you're seeing here, my local network and stuff, it's all fake. The numbers aren't real, but the functionality is. Obviously, when you run it, it's going to reflect your network. And then it also detects your local gateway, and it looks at the 3 hops after your gateway, plus it figures out your public IP address, and then it polls those. So you get constant data for all of these, and it builds up a history of what performance looks like on your network. So over time, it's going to figure out what does the common latency looks like for these different targets, so that it can figure out if something's changed and then give you advice on that. And then at the bottom, we have a simple latency graph showing me latency to whatever I have selected. So if I kind of move, I can move my cursor keys here. If I look at Quad9, press G, I can get a latency graph. And that graph is that data is being stored. So as I move between them, we're seeing the historical data there. And then right at the very bottom, for some of these services, if there is a web server available, we're recording the time to first byte. So one of the things I can do is I can add in a new host name. So press A, I can add in, for example, bbc.co.uk, and it'll start polling that. And at the bottom, it's making a request to bbc.co.uk over HTTPS, and it's recording the time to first byte, just to give you an idea of connectivity all the way through the stack to the web service that's listening on the other end. And then if I want to zone in on one of these things, so if I want to look specifically at the route to bbc.co.uk, press M for monitor, it's now effectively going to do a real-time and persistent trace from my local IP. And again, my IP addresses here, these are all false, but it will show you the route from you all the way through to that target destination. And so you can hear to the BBC. And then it's just going to give you a very simple graph. So this is dead easy. And if you're looking at this at the 4 panel, it reduces down kind of the most interesting data. So you can just look at this and you can kind of see in general what's going on with my local network. And if there is an address in here you're interested in, so I can move from the top panel to the second panel by pressing N. I can switch between those. And let's say I want to choose one of these addresses. I'm just going to wait till it gets to the final address so I can get an actual real address, because I'm not sure. These might be example ones. And if I do Shift W for a whois, it will then poll public whois server. So it's putting in false. The demo is putting in false addresses here, but this will give you a whois for that exact IP address to help you kind of figure out who owns that and see why that might be failing. Okay, so that kind of gives you a connectivity view into from your network node onwards. The next one is then bandwidth. So if I take a full screen on this, here we can see my default interface, which is EN0, and if we go back bottom left, you can see a little bit of information about the default interface I'm using to connect. So you can see we've got Wi-Fi at EN0. If I go back to full screen for the bandwidth page, we can see the current upload and download usage, and then we've got 3 panels at the bottom. So bottom left, we've got processors that are using bandwidth, and then in the middle one, are destination addresses, which are where bandwidth is going to or traffic is going to. And I can sort these. So if I look at now, I can sort by now. I can switch to the next panel, sort by total traffic sent. And then the final one, speed test history. So if you look at the top, you can see I press V, I can cycle between 3 different speed test providers. So Cloudflare's default, if I press S, that's now going to do a download and an upload speed test. And you can see obviously the graph changes dramatically because I'm starting to push a lot of data. And then the history of each of these speed tests is going to get recorded in the bottom right, so when this finishes. Change the next to Libra speed, hit S again, and you can see we have a running history of those on the bottom right. So this is just a really good way to see what's going on my machine from a bandwidth perspective. Is there a lot of bandwidth going across my machine? What processor is using a lot of bandwidth? Maybe your network problem is a bandwidth issue. And then the third thing to look at is your network bottom left here. So if we take a look at that, here we've got top left, just details of your network itself, your local addresses, what your gateway address is, DNS that's being used, and then bottom left we have information about those DNS services and the response time with a reference. So what I mean by that is at the top we've got 3 DNS servers that are configured likely by DHCP to your device and the response times for them, and then we've got Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1 service. So this is answering the question, I'm having problems resolving stuff. Is it due to my local DNS? I can see that Cloudflare is responding fine. Is it a problem with my DNS servers, or is it my inability on the network to reach DNS servers? So it's kind of just helping you with that. On the right-hand side, there's a network history. So I'm just going to, on my device here, I'm just going to plug in a physical network. So you can see at the top there, it says that we have a Wi-Fi network connected. And I'm just going to plug in a physical network here to my laptop. And it will detect in real time that the network's changed. And it will update the details here on the left. In fact, I'm just going to go back to the panel view while it does this. There we go. So now you can see that after a few seconds there, macOS detected that I had a physical connection and it realized, oh, this is better. And it's now set my default route to use that EN10 physical connection. So if I go back to full screen here, you'll see top right, we now have a network history. So if I press N again to switch that panel, I can see these different network changes. So if I actually disable my Wi-Fi, we'll see that also come up as a network change here. And when network changes happen, especially if your default route changes, then we're going to reset all the statistics on the left-hand side. And we also, as we do that, if you do Shift L, we will then record that network change as a location. So for me, I'm just switching between wireless and Ethernet. So it's not really a location physical change, but it is a location network change. And so each of these locations over time is going to get a baseline of connectivity. And that's how the color indications on the charts tell you whether you're, the green, yellow, and red is not necessarily performance based on how many milliseconds. It's a performance based on a percentage away from your baseline. So if I'm in a really, if I'm in a hotel with not a very good connection, it might show green for a period of time, even though it's particularly slow, but that green will change to red if all of a sudden that slow connection gets worse. So the coloring really is just an indication of where you are from the baseline. Obviously, if your connectivity is really bad, then there is a hard floor as to where those, indicators will go yellow and red. You can rename your locations. So if I go here, hit enter, I can call this home Wi-Fi. And I can call this one home wired. And it will remember this. So there's a configuration file that gets stored locally with a bunch of information in it. And you can see here, I've now been on wired for over a minute. And so it already has a bit of data to dictate what does the performance for a wired connection look like. So if I go back to the network tab there, so you can see that interface history on the right. I'm actually going to re-enable my Wi-Fi. And then I will unplug the physical connection, and so we'll see that switch back. And actually if we go back here, you'll see, oh, it's already done it, it's very quick. So at some point all of that would have gone red because in between those two acts of me re-enabling the Wi-Fi and disconnecting the cable, all of that traffic would have stopped working for a period. In fact, you can see the redness actually in the charts here. Okay, so that's kind of shown those three. And the final one is not a lot of detail here, but it's just for reference. If your machine is struggling, running out of memory, CPU usage is high, and also you can see the load numbers here, just to give you an idea, oh, actually my machine is maxing out. That's why my internet experience is poor, because my machine actually can't handle making requests or making any bandwidth. So they're kind of like the 4 panels. There are some other areas to show you which are global to all of this. So the first one is events. If you hit E, this just gives you a log for this session. So this doesn't get recorded between sessions, but for this session, what's happening? Any particular performance issues that come from the analysis, network changes you can see here. I ran the speed test, they get logged in there. And if you hit E, oh, hold on a second. If you press X, it will actually export that to a CSV file locally, and that's reported there as well. So that's the events list. If you press Y, you'll see a set of analysis. So if bottom left, you can see it says connection healthy, and that is determined by the ladder here. So it's looking at your machine performance, it's looking at your links, it's looking at your gateway performance, DNS, ISP paths, all these pieces. And there's some very simple logic. It's not AI, it's just some simple logic. That's basically a ladder of analysis, which says what's going on, what is my diagnosis based on all these different connectivity points and the information I have so far. And then below that, you've just got regular checks. So it's just looking for things like public IP, how NAT is involved. The clock is important, because if your clock is way out, things like certificate communication won't work due to timing and all those sorts of things. So it's just useful information there to again, answer the question, what's going on with my internet connectivity? And there's another tool we have. If you press C, this just does a scan to common outbound ports. So it's looking at HTTP, HTTPS, QUIC, SSH, DNS connectivity. SMTP, you can see here, is filtered by my local ISP, which is quite normal. And so it's just telling you, hey, can I connect from this machine to these TCP ports? I don't think I've got UDP in there. Yeah, to these TCP ports to answer the question, what's my connectivity like? So all these tiny little tools just to help you figure out what's going on from this device on this network location. There's a few other things we can do. If I hit P, I can hit pause. It's still recording in the background, but it just freezes my look at this point. If I want to take a quick look at something, I hit P again. Obviously, it shows me the data that's running in the background. If I hit L, it will start logging out all of the pieces of information from every single one of these stats. So for each of the targets, the monitoring that I'm currently doing, any speed test data, all of that is now getting dumped and has dumped 1,300 rows already into a CSV. Press L and that will stop. So that's it. It's a very simple tool. It brings together a lot of ideas from other tools that I've used in the past, but I just wanted something I could run in one interface, quickly kind of look at this, and quickly with a few keystrokes kind of get some simple answers about my network connectivity.